Hi, I'm going to try to make a video how to cut and, well, actually first measure and then cut cloth so that you can make a medieval tunic along the style of the Bocksten Man bog find. It's not that hard, but I guess it's confusing if it's written down, so maybe it'll be easier if we do it by making a video. Okay, so the things you'll need will be a piece of paper and a pencil, or a pen or whatever, obviously, to write it down. A measuring tape, or I guess you could use a piece of string and you just tied knots where you needed the measurements to go. And then you'll need a sharp pair of scissors for cutting the fabric, and obviously your fabric. Alright, so doesn't matter which measurement you do first, but I always do the front and back poncho piece basically. So I measure from the top of my shoulder down to how far I want the skirt to go. Basically the top of my knee. So I'm going to guess that's, 36 inches. Okay, so that's what I'll write down first. And kind of just draw it as a square or something, so I know. And then I also have to measure around the thickest part of my torso, which I think it's best to take a big old deep breath. I'll go with 38 inches. But that's a circle that's going all the way around me, so I'm going to have to figure out, I'm going to cut in half. But right now I'll just make a circle-y shape, and 38 inches. And then my arm from basically the top of my shoulder to my, where I want the sleeve to end on my wrist. So, you know, something like this. I'm going to say, oops, I almost said 25 inches, but then I didn't quite. Yeah. And you know what? I like slightly longer sleeves, just they're less annoying than slightly short sleeves. I'm going to go with 27 inches as my sleeve length, or I mean, at least what my arm-ish is. And then the last measurement I need is essentially from where I want my belt to go. So either, it depends where you want where you're comfortable with your belt. You can measure from your belly button, or from your actual belt if it's below your belly button. Mine is slightly below my belly button, or if you like your belt way high, I guess you can go up higher. I'll go belly button, and then belly button down to your knees, which is, in this case, 19 inches. So that's that high. There, so those are the 1, 2, 3, 4 main measurements. All right, and so now I had this circle measurement, which is the around my body. I'm going to cut it in half, and that's how wide I'm going to make the main piece of fabric. So 38 inches divided by 2 is 15 plus 4 is 19 inches. I sure hope I did that right. 19 inches times 2 should be 38. I'm going to go back and check that on a computer and then find out. That's a relief. I was right. It is 19 inches. So if I'm going to go across like this, it'll be 19 inches. I'm sure you can't see that. I have no idea if this will focus. You can tell I don't do videos very often. Okay, so I have a piece of wool fabric that is 2.5 yards long, and how wide is it? It is almost 54 inches wide. Probably was wider than that when I bought it, but I washed it to scour it in hot water, and it has shrunk a little bit, but not too much. It's probable that I'll get enough, well, I have enough fabric here to make a whole tunic out of it. Usually 2.5 meters or 2.5 yards does it for me. I think if you're quite a bit bigger than me, it might need to be about 3 yards or meters. Anyway, what I'll do now is I have a measurement of my shoulder down to my knee of 36 inches, and that's going to be doubled if I don't want to have a seam along the top, which I can if I need to cut fabric out of smaller chunks, but I think I have a big enough chunk to do two 36-inch lengths. So there's one, there's two, and because I'm going to need a hem at the bottoms of either side of it, I'll add another inch. Half an inch folded over for one hem and the other half inch folded at the other end. So I'm going to go to 37 at this point, and that's where I'm going to start my cut. Now, width-wise, I had my 38-inch chest. I'm massive, I'm sure. And I am divided it in two. That's 19 inches, but I'll have a seam on either side of it, which also is about half an inch. So I'm going to add an inch. So I'll make a 20-inch wide piece. And you know what? Just in case I get fatter or something, maybe I should go a little bit more. And you know what? I think I'll also make a mark with my pen. So why don't we just throw in an extra inch just in case? Could have done that with the length, but I'm less worried about the length. I'm pretty sure that's close enough. But your girth can occasionally change. All right, so let's just give it a snip. I'm going to dye this fabric blue in indigo vat, which I'm told is something that you don't want to disturb much with motion. So normally if I'm going to dye it, I can just take the whole piece of fabric and dump it in the dye bath, but apparently, I haven't done this before, the indigo, it would be recommended actually to just cut the pieces first and then dye it. Another reason why I wouldn't do this if I was using regular vegetable dyes, is, other than indigo I should say, is those are heated, pretty hot, and that could shrink your fabric some more. So if you cut it and then shrink it, then your pieces won't be the right size. So I'm just marking a 21-inch width here. So you can always make it smaller if you want, right? You're like, oh, it's a bit too fat, or a bit too baggy or whatever, sorry. So you can trim it if you need to, but it's hard to add stuff, or width anyway. So it's not really that fancy. I could probably do a nicer cut if I had a straight edge or something, but I'm not that concerned. Later on, I'm going to need to cut a hole in this for my head, but I don't need to, at this stage in the measuring process, cut the hole. So yeah, that'll fold over basically and go on me like that. Okay. Okay, so there's one measurement I didn't do on my body initially, and that's the width of my sleeve. And that's because I can never remember how to do it. So I'll just look at my old tunic and measure how wide it is. There, it is from the fold to the seam in the armpit, 9 inches. So there is going to be a seam along the bottom, of course, so that you'd add, you'd only have to add add a 1/2 inch there, but I'll just do 10 inches anyway. So it's going to be 9 on one side, flipped around is another, so that's 18. So I'll make a 19-inch wide sleeve. And you can make it a straight tube and then taper it later if you want to have tighter around your wrist. I've made the mistake of making it not enough cloth for going around my wrist, and I had to add fabric in the middle. It's a pain in the butt. So it's going to be, what was it again? 19 inches, which is strangely just about as wide as that big tube for the body was. But that one's not being folded in half, this one is. So let's look and see if we can cut it out of this stuff here. We got 19 inches here. Only 17. All right. Well, we'll go over here. So it's going to be 19 inches wide. So that gives it an extra inch for seam allowance, which is more than you need really, because you need half. No, I guess you need half on both sides. Maybe you need a full inch. And the length was 27 inches. And again, there'll be a hem on the one end and a seam on the other, so we'll go 28 inches for length. Actually, we'll go here and cut down. So that's one sleeve. So we're just making a rectangle again that's 28 inches by 19 inches. And we'll make 2 of these, obviously, because you have typically 2 arms. So, if I was going to be really careful with how much fabric I was going to cut, like, because I didn't have enough fabric, or I was really worried that I would run out, I might already taper the sleeve, just making sure that's where the cut ends. So that if I had to, I could use the scrap left over to piece together some other thing I needed. But I'm hopeful that I won't need to do that. So I got one sleeve, I just kind of lay it on top, and I can more or less have another one. And I'll just cut alongside it. Pretty good. So yeah, again, you normally do this with your cloth after it's been dyed. If you've dyed it in a hot cooking bath kind of thing, but apparently with indigo you don't have to do any cooking. So, all right, there's 2 sleeves, so it'll more or less show up, I mean, like that. And I will taper it actually, but I'm not sure how much I'll taper it, so I've left enough there to work with. Okay, so now the last measurement that we made was that, the last measurement we made was from the belly button to the knee, and that is for our gores, which if you didn't have gores, you'd have this tube going down to your knees, and you'd be stuck in it, kind of like wearing a really tight skirt, I guess. But with the gores, it spreads out on the sides and in the back and front, so that you can actually walk and move your legs. So we need 4 of these guys. And in this case, I made this one out of some scraps. I think I'll have enough fabric here to not have to stitch 2 little ones together and make a big one. And I think the width of the gore at the bottom doesn't have to be any particular width. Just if you want it to be really big of a skirt, I guess you'd have a wider one. But the length of it, or the height of it, I should say, is where it's going to go from basically your belt to your knees. So that's in the case I measured it, was 19 inches again. I'm just curious what this one is. Oh, it's only 13, 14. Part of that's because you're going to lose some of it when you're sewing on the inside. Width-wise, it is 11 inches, so I'm going to go 12. So I'll make a 12-inch wide, basically a triangle, but it's nice to have it curved a little so that the skirt, when it's spread out, it more or less goes in a, yeah, bit of a line that is circular. Okay, so let's do that. So I got 14 inches of fabric here. I'm only going to use 12. I don't know if I really care about having a little bit left over, but oh wait, I guess if it's going to be, oh yeah, 12 is with the seam allowance. So the middle will be at the 6-inch point, and then the length will be 19. And I'm going to need at least an inch for the hem and whatever I'm using at the top. So maybe I'll go 21 for a total length again. Now, because it's going to have a curve, I'll put my tape there and I'll swivel it to that edge. And then that's the line I'll draw. So it's going to be, again, not super straight, but straight enough. And then I'll also take it to that side. So 21 inches there. But because it's on either side of this triangle, there's a curve, right? So it's going to have to somehow swoop down to the middle a little bit. And now I've got a gore. And this is that piece that will make your skirt wearable. You can tell that I'm not a particularly exacting tailor. I'm sure a real medieval tailor would be a lot nicer and better at this than I am being. But I'm a butcher with some cloth, but let's put it that way. Even though butchers should be really good at cutting up meat too. So I need 4 of these. Now you can see out of this piece here, I've got these 2 nice little bits on either side, and if I were to cut them off and stitch them together here, I'd have another one of these with a seam down the middle, which I have done, like I did on this one, to conserve fabric, but I feel like I don't need to, and that just saves me a bit of sewing. So maybe I could squeeze this one in. Oh yeah, I can do that. That's a little bit of conservation there. This fabric's expensive and so is dye, so maybe it's not a bad idea to use as much as you can, or sorry, as little as you can, and then for leftovers you can use something else. Anyway, I'll make 4 of these, and then I'll move on. Okay, so I've got 4 gores cut out, and here's the scraps left over. Now there's 3 more pieces I have to cut, 2 of which are the same, and 1 of which is all by itself. 2 little guys need to be 6-inch squares called gussets, and they are going in your armpit. Am I going to get a 6-inch square out of this? Nope. Alright, that's no big deal. So, you could make them bigger or smaller. I just use 6 inches because it's easier. I guess if you really wanted a tightly tailored, form-fitting tunic, it wouldn't maybe have to have as big of a gusset, or I actually don't know how you're supposed to make a nice fancy form-fitting tunic. This is probably, I think, pretty working class pattern for one's clothing, I'm gonna guess. I don't really know what status the Bocksten Man had when he ended up in the bog. But whatever, so it's a imprecise, inexact thing how big your gusset is, or gussets. That's 12 inches by 6. So if you had not as much fabric as this, maybe you were like, oh crap, don't have quite enough for 6-inch gusset, you're going to probably be fine with a smaller gusset. Then a gusset goes into the armpit, so there's a little square there. I don't know if you can see that, probably can't, it's dark. So 2 gussets for your armpits, and then one last thing, a 12-inch square for your neck hole facing, which is mostly going to be on the inside of the garment, so you won't actually see much of it, but it's nice to have it in the same color as the rest of the fabric, because a tiny bit of it will be on the visible neckline. And it doesn't have to actually be a 12-inch square either. I've had times where I've had just a tiny bit of fabric left over and I don't have enough for this thing. So I piece it together in a round, weird little hole shape, kind of the edge of the circle, I guess. And as long as it goes around the place where the edge of that neck hole, it doesn't matter what configuration it's in as long as it goes around it. But this is an easy way to just cut something that will do the trick, because almost nobody's head is going to be bigger than a 12-inch diameter circle. So there we go. So this is all the leftover fabric that I don't need for this project, which is kind of great actually. I don't know what I'll do with it. Maybe I could dye it, make a hood out of it or something. Wow. By the way, another thing you can do with this pattern is if you wanted to make your skirt go quite a bit longer, the tunic that I'm making is for a man, but you could also make a woman's dress out of the same pattern just by making it much longer. So you could just measure it rather than down to your knees, measure it down to your ankles, I guess, if that's how far you wanted your dress to go, and you're off to the races. So here are the pieces that one needs, that's off center, to make the tunic. 4 gores, 2 gussets, 1 long piece for the body, or you could have 2 equally long, or sorry, 2 pieces half that length that you sew together if you didn't have enough in one length, and then 2 sleeves. And that will do the trick. Bye.